Okay, guys, I think we're live here.
Reese, are you there? Hi, Sarah. I think we're having some technical difficulties with Reese right now. Reese, you're back.
Hey, yes, I think we had an unstable internet connection. So we're live now. We've sorted out our internet issues, and we wanted to bring you into kind of our world today, a little bit of the world of real estate in Santa Teresa and of Costa Rica, and as foreigners living in Costa Rica. So I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction. We're broadcasting on the Two Costa Rica Facebook page, and I'm up in San Jose. My name is Reese, and I work out of the Santa Teresa and San Jose office. And Josie is joining me. She works just out of the Santa Teresa office. And we're going to open up and we're going to kind of do a conversation interview style here, see how things go. Hopefully, you'll have some questions for us. And if not, we have a lot of questions that people have been asking us over the past month or so. And so we've compiled those questions and we'll try to answer them for you. So you ready, Joes?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. So what's going on? What's the latest with coronavirus and lockdown kind of in Costa Rica in general? Let's start out there.
So, Costa Rica has done a really great job at containing the virus so far. So we had our first confirmed case in Costa Rica on the 6th of March, and the government acted pretty quickly. The borders closed on the 18th of March, so they closed to non-Costa Ricans and non-residents. And there was a stay-at-home order given by the government. People were asked to work from home wherever possible. It wasn't really the same strict lockdown that you saw in places like Madrid and London, but a number of businesses were asked to close or ordered to close, such as gyms and hotels, also theatres, churches and schools. So all the schools closed down, the beaches were closed to the public, and there were driving restrictions put in place. Those restrictions were quite strict. The driving restrictions at first were strict, especially during Easter, to try and stop people moving around the country. So the government from the beginning has been very proactive. They've been transparent, and they've been really good at constant communication. So every day at 1 p.m. there's a press briefing with the Minister of Health, and he goes through the numbers for the day. They talk about different programs and measures they've put in place to help people during this difficult time. So really, they've done a very good job at containing the virus so far. As of yesterday, Sunday, there were just over 1,000 cases, of which 377 are active. So the rest have already recovered. There's 16 people in hospital and 4 in intensive care. And the government has a protocol in place for contact tracing. And if you come into contact with somebody that's confirmed positive, you are tested and you go into a 14-day quarantine. So far on our peninsula where we are, we've only had 2 confirmed cases. We've had 1 in Tambor and 1 in Pequera. So right now we're actually slowly coming out of the lockdown, and we're starting a phased reopening. So as of today, the 1st of June, hotels are allowed now to open at 50%. The restaurants are allowed to operate during the week and on the weekends now at 50%. The beach, sadly for the surfers, is still only open from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. during the weekdays, and it's closed on the weekends. And there are still driving restrictions in place. You can't drive after 10 p.m. at night on the weekdays and at 7 p.m. on the weekend. So if things go to plan, we're going to continue with a phased reopening. So, for example, on the 20th of June, bars are going to be able to open at 50% capacity. And then on the 11th of June, finally, the plan at least is to open the public parks and the beaches. So they'll be fully open at that stage, depending on the situation. So the government has said that they're going to monitor the situation, and if they feel like they need to push back dates, they will. So the borders do remain closed to non-Costa Ricans and non-residents, and that's till the 30th of June. And again, it's possible that the government will decide to push that back further. They're going to monitor the situation and see what the best thing to do is. So obviously the tourism industry in Costa Rica has been severely hit by the sudden closure of borders and the shutdown of businesses. So prior to the crisis, Costa Rica was receiving about 3 million visitors per year, which is a lot if you think about the fact that the population is only 5 million. So tourism represents about 8% of the GDP, and it directly employs 219,000 people. So the government's working with plans to put in various measures and various programs to try and promote not just domestic tourism while the borders are closed, and then to really promote Costa Rica as an international destination once the borders are open.
So before I jump in, just want to make one comment, Jose. The beaches, I think the plan is to open them up, you said around July 11th, right?
The plan is to open up on the 11th.
Yeah, but that could get pushed back, could go ahead. And right now the borders are closed until June 30th, correct?
June 30th.
But that could, we don't know if that may be pushed back or not. I think they're going to let us know in a few weeks is what we've been told. What's it like in Santa Teresa? Not so much in the country as a whole, but the town of Santa Teresa. What was it like, when this all started? What's it been like the last few weeks? What's it like now?
So, well, when the lockdown first started, people here did take it very seriously, actually, and people stayed at home. They followed the rules, so we were really only going out to go to the supermarkets and go to the pharmacy. The supermarkets started doing home delivery, which was fantastic, and I think a lot of people hope they'll continue with that service. But yeah, so schools were closed, families were at home, homeschooling their kids, much the same as in many other countries around the world. So there was a period where we didn't really see each other, so we didn't know what was going on in town. The town was just very quiet. And now slowly with the reopening, there is more activity in town. I think people are very happy that things are slowly starting to reopen and come back to a little bit of normalcy. So town is quiet, but it's actually not as quiet as you might imagine. So when the borders closed quite abruptly, we had obviously, the town was full of tourists at that stage. And a number of those visitors actually, they either made the decision to stay and just wait out the lockdown here at the beach in Costa Rica, or they were forced to do so because their flights were cancelled. So we actually have a lot more people from other parts of the world than you would have expected actually at the moment, which is kind of good because it means that some of the houses have been full with long-term renters. The restaurants have had a steady flow of takeout orders, and now that they're allowed to open at 50%, there are people that want to go out. They want to feel a bit normal again, so people are going out for dinner. And people are still being careful, but we are kind of re-emerging right now.
Are people surfing? What's the surf been like?
So, well,
it's very rainy.
We are in the middle of our rainy season, well, the start of our rainy season, and this last week. So we've been allowed to go to the beach from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. In the morning on the weekdays ever since the 16th of March, and obviously 16th of May. And obviously all the surfers and everybody that loves the beach here were very happy that we could finally go and enjoy a little bit of sunshine. But the last week, we've had massive amounts of rain, so the walks on the beach have been quite wet. But the surf has been big. People have been surfing.
Yeah, from what I've heard, this is going to be a doozy of a rainy season. I've been up in San Jose the last few weeks, and it's been raining a lot here too. Yeah, feels like a strong one coming on.
Yeah, well, that's good. We need the rain too.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We haven't had a real rager for a few years now.
Yeah. Apart from being quiet, the town is looking beautiful actually, with everything's very lush. And one thing that's come out of this whole thing is that I know across the world it's the same, but here I've seen people suddenly dive into gardening, and the viveros have been doing a great trade because people are wanting to set up vegetable gardens, and so there's a whole movement around that here in town as well.
It's been interesting being up here at my place in San Jose, in that here, and you said that they're doing grocery delivery out in Santa Teresa and things. San Jose, where home delivery wasn't a big thing, now there's been a ton of that whole industry has just exploded. You can order everything online here. Everything can be delivered now. Groceries, vegetables, organic produce, all kinds of stuff.
I think that's a change that's, especially in San Jose, I'm sure that's a change that's going to stick after the crisis has passed.
Oh, for sure.
It would be great if we could also have that service here as well, but I'm not sure if that would.
Well, I think it does exist for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Last night my wife needed to purchase a new computer for her receptionist, whose computer died, and she lives outside of San Jose in Puriscal, not that far outside of San Jose. But we went on to a website where you could order a computer and buy it, and they would home deliver it outside of the Central Valley, all over the country. And I was shocked at how easy that whole process was. But it's certainly going to change some things. Yeah. So are you still working and showing properties out at the beach right now?
Yes, we are. We are still working. So I am currently in the office. This is our Santa Teresa office. But actually, we're not manning the office for regular office hours. There's probably one agent will come in every day, but not at specific hours. But we are seeing clients by appointment. We've had a lot of inquiries. We've had a lot of either people that are in town, people that are finding us on the website, or old clients. I would say right now I have on average one client a day. And I am doing physical showings, or we're doing physical showings. We have a healthy showings protocol in place, which allows us to take people to view properties, but also make sure that we're being careful and keeping people safe as well. So in addition to doing the physical showings of properties, we're also doing a lot of video tours and video walkthroughs with clients who are currently abroad, but they still want to know what's happening in the market here. They're still interested in what the new properties that are coming up or any price changes, and they're very eager, many of them, to get back here as soon as the borders open again. We're also talking with sellers. We're having new listings coming up over the last couple of weeks, so we're working with sellers to get their properties on the market. So.
Yeah, I've noticed too. I mean, I've been working here, through some different closings and that we've been working on, that some of which started before all this happened, and some of which we've done recently. And one of the things that surprised me has been also, just even last night and this morning, is since everybody's online, buyers, sellers, and the escrow companies and everything, and people are not out and about quite as much, it seems like things go a lot quicker. I was shocked at how quick I put together a deal over the weekend, and all the paperwork was submitted in, and normally that would have taken me a long time to get the buyer and seller and everyone together. But I think people are a little bit more, a little more online, a little more focused. And well, some of them also really want to get down here to Costa Rica. We'll talk about that in just a minute here. How have sales been? How many sales have you seen out of the Santa Teresa office during this time?
Well, I'm just going to say hi to Mitch here. Hi, Mitch. I hope you can get out here soon as well. So yeah, we have seen sales going through. So obviously the first week when shutdown happened, everybody was a bit shell shocked and didn't really know what to expect. But after that, we did have we've had a steady flow of clients, and also we've had sales going through. So in May, for example, we did close 2 beachfront houses, which was fantastic. And we've got another 3 properties or sales in escrow, and they'll be closing in the next month or 2. So obviously, while the pool of buyers is not as big as it was pre-COVID, so at the beginning of 2020, we were very busy. Everybody was doing multiple showings a day. While that's not the case now, we do have a pool of buyers, a reduced pool of buyers that have cash. They are ready to buy, but they will tell us they're looking for the right property at the right price. So I do think we'll continue to see sales happen. But those sales are going to happen where both the seller and the buyer are willing to enter into negotiations on price, and also where I think something that's going to become more interesting for both sides is perhaps more creative structures. So doing a transaction with a payment plan of 5 years, for example, or in the case of commercial properties, doing a rental contract with the option to purchase. Just doing new ways to think about how to get the transaction done, and keeping both sides happy, really.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing too is, you know, real estate and where you live and where you're spending time now is of huge importance to a lot of people. People are thinking a lot about, okay, what does the next year look like for me? But not just what does the next year look like for me. You know, this whole COVID crisis and everything has made people rethink their work and home life. And it also means that they need to make some changes. I've been dealing with some clients up here in San Jose who are suddenly at home working with their kids, and they're saying, maybe I don't want to go back to a traditional office. You know, a number of attorney friends of mine are in those positions. And, you know, and at the same time they're saying, okay, I need something different than where I'm living now. And, you know, I need to figure out, okay, how quick do I make that move? Do I make that move now? Do I wait? You know, I mean, and some people just don't know exactly what to do. And I think that's part of our role, is to help people kind of talk through from an outside perspective. Okay, what are your goals? What do you need right now? And for some people, it's not just a matter of buying a vacation home at the beach. It's a matter of finding a place where they can work and live with their family. You know, it's not just a matter of, you know, of a luxury. It's an essential, and I think that's happening all over the world in a lot of different places. What type of buyers are you seeing right now? Who are the people that are looking?
Well, we have locals that are in town, and they're also kind of, many locals have been asking me about what's going on with the market, and have been interested enough to come and have a look at a few properties and keeping their ears open. But the large proportion of the clients and the inquiries that we're getting right now are, as you say, from people who are really thinking about where they want to live. So we have clients that are inquiring because they're talking about relocating their families to Costa Rica. They either no longer want to live in a city, or they've realized through this whole process that they can actually work remotely, so they can live somewhere beautiful, raise their kids somewhere where it's more healthy and natural, and yet still work in the same industry, but just work here from that industry. So one of the reasons that Santa Teresa is attractive in that regard is that, the community is full of families with young kids, but also we have a high-speed fiber optic internet, which means that people can very easily relocate here, but still retain their jobs or work in the same industry, but just work remotely. So we're seeing a lot of that. And that kind of segues into what you're going to be talking about, Reese, because all these clients that have this dream, or some of them have had the dream for a while, and this has spurred them in to really take action and really work on moving towards that dream. So we have been having a lot of clients that are asking the questions that relate to, right, how do I do this? How do I move to Costa Rica? What are the things that I have to think about? So these are the questions I'm going to ask you. So one of the questions we get a lot of are, so what are my options as a foreigner? How can I make that move? And how do you see people doing it?
Well, I think, the answer to that question really, it changes a little bit because of some practical realities of travel right now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think the answer to that question, is something that I've given to clients a lot over the years. We get a lot of people that come in. We get different people that view Costa Rica differently. There's some people, and probably the bigger bigger majority of people say, hey, look, I'm not ready to make a complete move to a foreign country, but I'd like to spend significant blocks of time there. And, I work online, I have a business, or I have a business that I can step away from for periods of time. And I think, that type of part-time Costa Rican resident that can come here for 2 to 3 months at a time, 4 months out of a time, there's not too many considerations for them because they're really more of an extended tourist stay. And so for those type of clients, it's more about finding the right rental, sorting out things about medical insurance, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's more about, okay, where do I want to be and can I stay there for, this period of time? Obviously, with everything that's going on in the world right now, that type of person is going to have a lot harder time. And so we're getting more and more of the inquiries of, okay, what if I want to spend all year or half the year there? Or what if I want to spend all year there? Or what if I want to spend the entire school year there with my kids and then take a summer vacation off to be able to go back to wherever I came from? Or what if I'm going to sell everything and move to Costa Rica? And, what I often tell people is, you want, before you make that full move and say, I'm going to just sell everything and move, you definitely want to try it out a little bit. I don't find that most foreigners really successfully make a total move from one country to the next. I often tell people, move here, spend most of the year here, but always have that place you can go back to wherever the country you came from. Typically, you're going to have you will have family, you'll have friends back home wherever you live, and you want to keep those ties there in place, at least initially. So that you don't have the experience of just moving to a foreign country and 6 months later, the shininess of it wears off. And we'll talk about some of those things in a minute here. But you want to keep that attachment back home. But, I think there are definite options. It obviously is a place that a lot of expats relocate to, at least part-time. The infrastructure is there and in place for people to do so, especially in a town like Santa Teresa, but in other beach towns in the country and in the capital as well. It depends a lot on what you do, where you come from, but you definitely do have the ability. It is a fairly user-friendly place to relocate to. It's just better sometimes to take it in steps.
Yeah, so we have a lot of people here who have their second home here, and it's interesting. Some families decide to come for the dry season, which is our high season, so that's December to March, and they really love that period. And then we have other families who do the opposite, who they want to be at home for their winter, perhaps because they ski, and then they'll come here for the rainy season. So as a foreigner, is it possible to work in Costa Rica?
That's one of the first questions that we always get from people, especially people wanting to kind of just close it all up and move here. And so, moving here and finding a job in whatever industry that you worked at in the country you came from is not such an easy process. Costa Rica has a limited population, and they have, high education. And like many countries, they want the good jobs to go to the citizens and permanent residents. And so the way that the country is structured, and especially now with high unemployment, which is taking place all over the world, Costa Rica is very concerned about that. And they're very concerned about, as employment recovers, in the coming years, their biggest concern is employing their own people. So the first answer would be, if you're coming here to move here and find a job, then that's probably not the plan that you want to be working on. The second thing that does happen, although, there are some specific industries, especially in the tech sector, there are specific skills that they're looking for. And, a website that you can go on, glassdoor.com, has a lot of job listings. You can just type glassdoor.com, Costa Rica, and you can see all the different job listings that are available in Costa Rica. And some of those are open. There are some skills. There are some transnational companies that need specific skill sets, especially in the tech sector. And that's got to be more focused around the Central Valley, San Jose area. Now, but there are some other options as far as working in Costa Rica goes. Costa Rica does welcome people that are coming in here to invest and start businesses, and there's different ways that you can do that. So, if you start a restaurant, start a small hotel, if you have money to invest in Costa Rica and you're employing people, you are allowed to invest and work in your own business. That is something that is a very common thing. That's the way that one of the ways that I came to Costa Rica, and the way I think Josie, you did as well. We're both business owners, and we work in our businesses here, as permanent residents now. But a lot of foreigners start that way. Another way that people do it now, and I think right now more than ever, people are making that switch to working online, and it's less important where you live. And so a lot of the inquiries I'm getting from clients are, can I simply work in Costa Rica for my U.S. company online? And the answer is yes. Costa Rica has a lot of leeway. If you're earning your income from outside of Costa Rica and you're spending part of it here, then the doors are open to you. There's hoops that you need to jump through. There's things that you need to do. And there are some considerations that you need to talk to your tax advisors about as far as where your taxation takes place. There are some definite considerations that people have, but those considerations usually have to do with your employer elsewhere. We have people that are paid in Europe, and they have to spend a certain amount of time living in Europe. They can't live all their time in Costa Rica working online for a European company. I've heard that issue come up before, but definitely, I think in the post-COVID world, especially, or in the world that we're in right now, companies are a lot more flexible with online working. So I think you have those different options there. Finding a job is harder. Starting your own business is definitely easier, and working online, from abroad is definitely, a much easier way to live and work in Costa Rica. The final thing I'll say there is we do have strict immigration laws, and sometimes those are frustrating for people. A lot of foreigners here, think that they can obtain residency quickly if they're starting a business or working online or have income, and that's not the case. Nothing with immigration and residency in Costa Rica happens quickly. It never has. It probably never will. And so, if you're committing to living here long term, you also are committing to a 2 to 3 year process. Jumping through the hoops to get a temporary residency or provisional residency, and to move on towards more permanent residency. So it's not the type of place that you just hop in and out of.
But you can be in the country while you're waiting for your
correct. You can be in the country as long as you meet certain conditions. And offline, if people have questions, we can point you to the right people that can help you go through that. There's a lot of like immigration in any country. There's a lot of different ways you can work and live and obtain legal status in a country. But you can't just get on a plane and come here and expect it to all work out. You need to actually think through it a little bit.
Yeah. So just going back to the online work that you were talking about, what's interesting is that here in Santa Teresa, even pre-coronavirus, we had over the last couple of years, since we got the fiber optic internet and the infrastructure kind of improved quite a bit, we actually saw a bit of a demographic change in terms of the people that were moving.
Yes, for sure.
And those were people who are in the tech industry working online. There's even people here that have set up cryptocurrencies. And one of my friends, for example, he's a fund manager for a cryptocurrency, and he's here full time, and he works from his house. He's got fantastic internet, and he's able to carry on his company like that. So we probably see more of that trend, but it had already started pre-COVID.
For sure. I mean, I don't think they'll mind me sharing, but I have a great family that rents my house in Santa Teresa right now, and both of the parents work online, and they actually help businesses with e-commerce. They actually help businesses go from not being online to being online, obviously, all over the world, And a lot of their clients are from the States, but all over the world. And of course, they're very busy right now because a lot of companies are realizing we need to go online. And they have two wonderful daughters who go to school online. In the US, I did the same thing with my son a few years ago in Santa Teresa. He finished his high school. He did part of his education actually from the office you're sitting in right now, Josie. He had a desk in the corner, and he's back at. And the funny thing about it is that he finished his high school online in Santa Teresa, went to university, and was excited about being in class in university. And 1 year into university, halfway through, he was sent online, and so now he's considering himself what he's going to do. So a lot of people, I think you're right, are in that situation of it was already beginning, and this just really accelerated the ability for people to do things. And the internet we have, just to add to that, so that people understand, the irony is where you're at in Santa Teresa right now with dirt roads on the coast, you have 100 megabit internet connection right there in the office, and I'm here in the Central Valley, literally 2 blocks from both of the main internet providers in the entire country, and I cannot get the internet connection that you have.
Wow.
I have a good internet connection, but I can't, I can't get the full fiber connection that you have. And so a lot of people, I think, are making that move because of it.
I feel like we were very lucky that they decided, for some reason, they decided that our area was going to be the pilot plan for this amazing.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. It was definitely more important than our new water system. Yes. It's definitely more important than them fixing our roads. The internet, the primary driver to development in rural communities in Costa Rica has been internet.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, moving on, how do Costa Ricans feel about foreigners, and do you feel that they're welcoming to people that do decide to make that move and come over?
That's an interesting question. I get that question a lot. Especially from people coming, especially with the West Coast of the U.S., different parts of the U.S. They feel like, okay, maybe some foreigners are not so welcome in Costa Rica. A lot of people that go to Mexico feel like maybe Americans aren't so welcome in Mexico because there's a bit of tension between those two countries. What I find is that most foreigners are very welcome in Costa Rica, with one big if. I think Costa Ricans appreciate foreigners coming in, appreciate tourism. Many Costa Ricans have traveled to the countries in which people have come to Costa Rica. The one time when they don't like foreigners is they don't enjoy foreigners that whine and complain about the country. That is the one big issue that I think foreigners run into here. And there are some things to whine and complain about that are different about where they came from. Our road infrastructure isn't as good. Costa Rica is a country that's in the process of development. It's not what we would call, I think most people would call a third world country. It's a country that's in the developing world. And there's a lot of bureaucracy and other things that come along with living here that sometimes foreigners don't appreciate. And when foreigners tend to whine and complain about those things, I think Costa Ricans don't appreciate them very much. Foreigners that take the time to learn some Spanish, learn to appreciate some things about the country, ask questions, and engage are very much appreciated. And I don't think anybody anywhere in the world likes whiners very much. So, we have a question that just came in from Todd, one of our partners and the main driving force in Costa Rica. And he's asking what type of properties have the highest level demand right now. So I'm going to let you fill that one, Josie, first. And then I'll
it really comes back to, again, what we've been talking about. Right now, we are seeing people who are looking for houses for themselves and their family. I would say that's the majority. We've had a few people looking for businesses, but I'd say right now that's about 20% of the clients that we have. But most most people right now they're either looking for land where they can build a family home, or the majority actually are looking around the 500,000 to 700,000 mark, and they're looking for a family home. So all of those things that we've been talking about are important. They want to know. They want to know how the internet is at the house, how the access is, because they're going to have their kids, what the neighborhood's like, how it's set up with the neighbors, all those things that you think about when you're thinking about bringing a family over to Costa Rica. So that's at the beach. Definitely, that's what we're seeing. People looking for really beautiful homes.
And I think the subset of that too is I've also have several clients looking for large development type properties, which that market had kind of not been such in high demand in Costa Rica recently. But I've had, a number of inquiries on very large properties by the beach, like above 100 acres, where people are thinking a little bit more towards the future. They're thinking about the way the world's going to look in the next few years and thinking about, okay, do I want to develop something where we can grow our own food, where we have, some type of community development model where we're integrating with the local Costa Rican community and people are coming in from outside the country. I've even had somebody thinking about a place for a little bit more of a type of retirement community for expats coming to Costa Rica. So we're getting that kind of interest. I'm not sure that those people will completely follow through, but there definitely are things on the drawing boards thinking about, okay, Costa Rica as a destination. And I think the way that Costa Rica has handled this COVID crisis so far, we're still on eggshells. We're not out of the woods yet here at all. But the way that Costa Rica has handled it so far has made a lot of people look at our country, our health system, our socialized medicine system, and they've said, okay, maybe this is a place that we need to consider instead of what other country they were looking at before for a similar type of project. So I'm seeing that as well.
So going back to the questions that people ask when considering the move, so would you say that people need to learn Spanish, or can they get away with not learning Spanish?
Well, I get that question all the time. I think, somebody very wise told me a long time ago, your first 6 months in the country determines your next 20 years. And I think what you do in your early time when you move here, spend time here, does determine the trajectory of where you go. So if you come here and your language abilities are very limited, and you don't have a desire to learn a language, probably what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up living in one of the more coastal communities, and you're going to surround yourself in a community of people you can communicate with, which there are. I mean, there are communities, English speaking, German, Dutch, French. There's a lot of different expat communities here. But I think if you want to successfully, integrate better into the community, you should make the effort to learn some Spanish. I think most people want to do that. There are Spanish schools around. There are tutors available. If you live on the coast, your need for Spanish fluency is far less. If you live in the capital, the need for Spanish fluency is far higher. Ironically, more people probably in the capital are bilingual than at the beach. Yeah. However, they're going to relate to you better if you're making an effort in both languages. And so I think it's important to have some proficiency in Spanish. I think your world becomes very limited if you have none. But it is very possible to adapt, but you'll adapt into more of an expat enclave. And there are great tools right now. If you're thinking about coming here, there's some great online, I don't want to sound like an infomercial here, but I taught English here years ago in Costa Rica when I first moved here. And I've been super impressed by the Rosetta Stone online language learning. They do a really great job. And there's others that are out there so that you do have the ability to, get proficiency up to a level even before you come here and while you're here, for sure.
Yes, I definitely think it's something very rewarding. Even if you just take it slowly, it's definitely very rewarding to be able to communicate with your neighbor and and the gardener and people at the shops.
Yeah.
So what kind of political system does Costa Rica have, and is it stable?
I get this question all the time, and a lot of people ask it from from total ignorance, and some people ask, well, I've heard this, is this actually true? Costa Rica has what would best be characterized as a social democracy, which is common in like Norwegian country, or not Norwegian countries, but the Northern European countries have the kind of political system. I'm not comparing us to Northern European countries completely, but that type of political system is in place. Where the government is involved heavily in the economy. And, from a U.S. perspective, a lot of people in the U.S. would probably call Costa Rica, more of a socialist type of economy. But we have a democratic system, that people are elected. Costa Rica takes huge pride in democracy. If you come from Europe, our system is going to be very similar to a lot of European systems. So the government is very involved in the economy, but at the same time, the political system is very open and transparent and is democratic. We don't have dictators. We don't have an army. Transition from one government to the next is very smooth and has been very smooth since the mid-1800s, with a hiccup in 1948 when one president decided not to leave. And that's a whole nother story that we can talk about offline. But we do have a stable democratic system. We do not have an army. We don't have a lot of civil unrest. We do have demonstrations in the streets sometimes when people are upset, striking, those types of things do happen here. Sometimes people are a little bit surprised by them. But, Costa Rica has a very direct participative democracy. A lot of people call it the Switzerland of Central America for a number of different reasons. But one of the main reasons is that the direct democratic system that Switzerland has is very similar to the way that Costa Rica has. Very different from our neighbors. Unfortunately, Latin America is not very stable politically, especially Central America. And so we definitely stand out, I think, in Central America as having, and we're seen all over Latin America as having a stable democratic system.
Yeah. And kind of correlated with that question, a question I get a lot from people is about security. When buying a house, they want to know, what do they have to think about for security, and is it safe? Is a big question we get.
Yeah, Costa Rica has its own way of dealing with safety and security and its own issues. I think the cities in Costa Rica are very, very similar to big metropolitan areas in the U.S. New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Chicago, very, very, very similar in that, people sometimes live in independent houses. A lot of people live in gated communities or in apartment buildings. It's not considered a terribly dangerous city, but it is like a major metropolitan area anywhere in the world, and that there is crime. There are home break-ins. There is violent crime at times. I think the one of the big differences here to a lot of big cities in the U.S. and Europe is that your safety and security are a little bit more your responsibility. So a lot of people look at it in the sense that, okay, I need to be careful about where I live and what I do, what time of the night I'm out. Am I going to be walking through the city at 2 a.m.? You wouldn't do that in Los Angeles. You wouldn't do that in San Jose. And so I think you have to approach it like a big metropolitan city, and you have to think about the safety and security of where you live, in terms of, I'm a little bit more responsible for taking care of myself. Down at the beach, specifically Santa Teresa, I would say is very, very similar to a lot of tourist places. Very similar to Hawaii, very similar to Indonesia. There's petty theft. Cars get broken into. I don't want to gloss that over. If you drive your car down to the beach, leave your cell phone and your wallet in the glove compartment and your iPad between the seat, it won't be there when you come back. I mean, that's the reality. That's the reality here. It's the reality in a lot of tourist communities. I think if you take the precautions of, keeping your valuables locked up, if you're in a rental house or if you're in your primary home, you're okay. If you leave things out and unattended, or even in your home, if you leave a lot of valuables laying around where people can see them through the window, there is petty theft. That is a reality of Costa Rica. A lot of people want it to be as safe and secure as the Northern European countries that our political system is like. But for safety and security, we're a lot more like, other mainstream, beach locations or major cities around the world.
And something that's obviously important, and people are realizing is very important during this time where we've got a pandemic on, is healthcare. So if people move here, what access do they have to healthcare?
I get this question a lot. And, my views on Costa Rican healthcare have changed just in the last couple of months even. We have two systems in Costa Rica. We have a private system and a public system. Let's talk about the public healthcare system for a minute here. The public healthcare system is not a cradle to grave, covers everybody in the country. It is a system that is universal access, but you have to have access to it. So if you're working, your employer pays into the system. If you're an independent contractor, you pay into the system. If you're unemployed, there's a process that you have to go through to be a part of the system. Everybody in Costa Rica has access to the universal healthcare system, but it's not just automatic. You don't just land here on a plane and immediately have access to the system. You gain access by paying into it or by being in Costa Rica and not going into it. And there are public hospitals all over the country. We have probably the best public system in Latin America. And it's like socialized medicine in other places. Emergency healthcare is covered and is taken care of. Elective surgery, things like getting knee surgery, you very likely will have to wait, 3 months, 6 months for surgery to happen. And that's where the private system comes in. So parallel to the public system, we have a private healthcare system, which you can buy insurance for or just pay into, where it's a little bit more of an on-demand type medical system. A lot of people come from the U.S. for medical tourism because our private system is a lot cheaper than the United States, cheaper than some European countries that don't have universal coverage systems. And so there's a lot of different, there's ways to go back and forth between the two. What often happens is people go back and forth between both systems. A lot of the doctors here work in both the public and the private. And a lot of people that use the systems use the private for certain things and the public for other things. With this whole pandemic going on is a great example. The country has announced at the beginning of the pandemic that the public system would take care of all people that fell ill with COVID-related symptoms. Whether they were paying into the public system here, whether they were tourists, part-time residents, et cetera. And the focus has been for the public healthcare system to take over this as a public health emergency. And so it's, for a lot of us that live here that don't use the public system a lot, either because we're very healthy or because we pay into the private system, our whole view on Costa Rica has probably changed in the last couple of months. And we look at it and say, okay, wow, we're really glad that this is in place, because there is something in place so that people can get free testing, so that people can get taken care of in the case of all kinds of different medical emergencies. So if you are a foreigner and you come to Costa Rica and you become a resident, you are legally required to pay into the public system. So you will be part of the public system whether you like it or not. And I think that backup is good. They've made that obligatory, and even though not everybody necessarily wants to do that, I think they're grateful for it, especially in times of medical emergencies. And at the same time, if you want to be part of the private medical system, you either pay as you go, or there are a lot of different private insurance insurances available, including things like Blue Cross Blue Shield from the U.S. And there are some other a number of different European Bupa Health and different European insurances that are available. Michelle is saying hi to us. She's a good friend of both Josie and I's.
On the private, so obviously I'm part of the public system because I pay my social security every month, but I also pay private insurance with Blue Cross, and from what I understand, it's a lot more accessible than what you'd expect in the US for private insurance. So my premiums I pay each month $160 a month, I think, for my private insurance, and that actually allows me to travel to the US as well, so I'm covered in the US. So it seems quite reasonable.
Yeah, and the insurance question, the medical insurance question is an important one. If you're going to move here, depending on pre-existing conditions you may have and where you're coming from and everything else, it's super important to ask that question. There usually are ways in which you can access both systems very similar to how you did at home, but it's not just automatic. You need to think about it, think through a little bit.
Yeah. So here at the beach, we're all animal lovers. I think most people, I have a dog or they have a cat. And pets are an important part of people's lives here. A lot of people want to be able to bring their pets over. So that's a question we get a lot is can I bring my pet with me when I move to Costa Rica? Or even if I just come for a short period of time?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is that, a lot of people too remember back to a time when pets had to be quarantined for periods of time, which in some parts of the world that's still done. But there's certain hoops you need to jump through. You have to get different internationally recognized vaccination cards for your pet, a checkup from a vet. But typically, you can travel with a pet to Costa Rica, very similar to the way that you travel around in the U.S. or anywhere in Latin America. My understanding now is all of Latin America, you can travel with your pets from North America here and back. There are some practical considerations. If your pet's small and can go under the seat on a plane, it's going to be a whole lot easier to travel, with a pet. If they're larger and have to be put, underneath in the baggage hold, I've had issues with clients that have problems with, temperatures. We have high temperatures here in many places in Latin America and in many cities in the U.S. that connect to Latin America. So some people have struggled traveling with pets, not because of the health issues, but because of airline issues. So it's good to check. I mean, if you're traveling occasionally back and forth with your pet, with a larger pet, that can be accomplished. If you're traveling with a smaller pet, that can be accomplished. And so, it can definitely be done. But it's important to have a good vet back home, wherever you come from, and also to have good veterinary care, in Costa Rica, which is available all over. And in Santa Teresa, there's good vets as well.
Yeah. So moving back again to talking about buying property, what are the special things that somebody from a different country would have to think about when buying property in Costa Rica?
Well, a lot of people ask the question, because some countries don't allow foreigners to own property here. And so in Costa Rica, our property system, for the most part, gives foreigners and Costa Ricans the exact same property rights as anybody in the country that's a citizen enjoys. So for any property that's non-beachfront property, owning titled property is the same as owning titled property almost anywhere else in the world. And the rights afforded to foreigners are exactly the same as the rights given to citizens. Where things change is on beachfront property. Beachfront property is typically not owned individually, even by Costa Ricans. It's typically held by the government in something called a concession, or some people would recognize the term leasehold. And, so if you own beachfront property or you own a beachfront concession, normally you need to have a Costa Rican partner in that property. And there's some hoops that you need to jump through as a foreigner. So for the most part, property titling is the same as any other country. And you have the same rights as citizens, except for beachfront.
Yeah, so for properties off the beachfront, you can own property, and actually you can own a business on a tourist visa in Costa Rica.
Correct. Yeah, you can own the property. You can keep it in your personal name. You can put it in a corporation name. You can put it in the name of a foreign corporation if you want. There's different. You can put it in the name of a trust, a family trust. There's different vehicles by which you can own property.
And in terms of taxes, what taxes do people buying and also moving to Costa Rica have to think about?
You know, the tax structure here is in many ways similar to the US. It has a little bit of a mix of a European tax structure. I mean, you know, we pay income tax on a graduated scale, just like a lot of places in the world, based on our real income. We now pay capital gains tax on sale of property. So if you buy and sell a property, you're going to pay a capital gains tax on that property normally, of about 15%, which is very similar to kind of the U.S. levels. Sales tax in Costa Rica is 13%, higher than some countries in the Americas, lower than some countries in Europe. So in general, though, I mean, one of the things that people sometimes struggle to come to terms with is Costa Rica is a high tax country. It's not a low tax destination. The government provides a lot of different social services, and a lot of, the government is funded through taxation, and taxation is not low here. And Costa Rica has gone through an economic crisis, as many countries have in the past 10 years, and part of their solution has been to raise taxes. So there's different levels of tax here. They do not approach the levels of a lot of European countries, but we are not a low tax destination. And so if people have specific questions about, different specific taxes, we can talk to them about, what those taxes are and what they're designated for. But
really the tax levels, I'm not sure because I'm not from the US, but from what I understand, they're not dissimilar to the levels that you'd see in the US.
Very similar to the US in some places.
Yeah.
They're higher than some destinations in the US. Probably, very similar to places like New York, state of New York, state of California. Those types of tax levels are similar to the ones in Costa Rica.
Yeah. So the question that I'm getting most frequently, I would say probably on a daily basis right now, is when can I come visit?
Oh boy, wow, that's a tough one. I mean, right now our borders are closed until June the 30th. They have extended tourist visas until August the 18th, though. So, I think they're probably hedging their bets right now. Anyone that could tell you when they're going to open the borders again would be lying, because no one really knows. I think what they're doing is the government is really taking a cautious approach to how they open up for non-resident foreigners coming in. And the reason they're doing that is because a good majority of the COVID cases in Costa Rica have come from Costa Ricans that traveled outside the United States or foreigners that traveled here. And so what's happening right now is there is travel back and forth between Costa Rica and mainly the U.S. Very limited travel in which Costa Rican citizens or permanent residents can travel to Costa Rica, and foreigners here can leave. But the Costa Ricans that travel here, they're tested. They have a COVID test when they arrive, and they're sent home to quarantine, or they're sent, if they don't have a place to go home to quarantine for 2 weeks, they're sent to a government sponsored quarantine. The government has rented several hotels in San Jose in which they have some people quarantined that don't have a place to quarantine. And so right now it's hard to say. It's really every 2 weeks we have to follow the Ministry of Health guidelines. I believe June 19th or 20th we'll have another update in which they will potentially open the borders or potentially, keep them closed for a longer period of time. A lot of people think that they're going to move the border closures forward, through the summer into the fall and maybe even up until November, December. That's what a lot of people think. That probably what they will do is allow at some point foreigners, or maybe even, part-time residents that don't have residency here, to come back, but they will have to go through the same process that Costa Ricans do, COVID testing and a very strict 2-week quarantine, which means that most of the people coming, foreigners coming in the next probably 4 to 6 months will not have really the option to come here for a 2-week vacation. There'll be people that are wanting to come and are willing to stay for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the amount of people that are really just following the news, or they've asked me to keep them updated on what's going on with the borders, because as soon as they find out, they want to come back.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of those people are thinking, oh, well, I'll stay for 3 months, or I'll stay for 6 months.
Yeah, and I think people that are thinking about their plans, and I want to say hi to Jill. Jill just said hi to us. She's
hi, Jill.
A lot of people that are thinking about their plans in Costa Rica over the next, during the next year coming here, I think people really need to think about, okay, if I'm going to be going to Costa Rica, probably I'm going to be going for a longer period of time. I'm not going to be traveling to Costa Rica for 2 weeks. I need to think about going for a month or 2 months, month and a half for a visit at least. Because there may be quarantine restrictions going back to the US. We don't know yet. Once travel opens back up, we don't know what that's going to look like to the US and to other countries. My sister just, for example, her husband's from Australia, and she's an Australian permanent resident. She was in the US and kind of got stuck there for a long time. And she went back to Australia, and they had a mandatory 2-week government quarantine where she flew in, and then she was released from that quarantine and has now gone into another 2-week self-quarantine at home. That whole process, as countries go through these, Costa Rica will, I'm sure, follow very similar to what other countries are doing.
Yeah, so that will have a knock-on impact, obviously, on so a lot of the houses that we have here, they run as vacation rental houses.
Correct.
So a lot of them are now going to be looking at doing long-term rentals. I think people here are thinking, well, up to Christmas, I'm going to attract long-term rentals. We are going to see more domestic tourists coming from San Jose, so they will help people get through that period. And then I think people are hoping from December onwards that things will be a little bit more normal and we will have a season again.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot of Costa Ricans in the Central Valley right now that are both considering, as we've been on this call, I had one that just called me, and, this person's considering buying a place at the beach. A lot of Costa Ricans travel outside of Costa Rica for vacation. Some own homes, outside of Costa Rica as well. And a lot of those people are also rethinking, okay, how do I spend my time? Where am I going to spend my time? Where am I going to buy a house? Am I going to, is it better for me to travel outside the country, or do I travel inside of Costa Rica instead of leaving?
Yeah. Well, that's it for my questions.
And I think we've been on for about an hour now. I hope we've covered most of what people have wanted to hear so far. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining us, the people that did and listening to us. I hope we could cover everything. And if we haven't covered everything, you can find us online through the To Costa Rica webpage, or on our personal Facebook pages, or on the To Costa Rica Facebook page. And you can ask us all the questions you want. And, one of our, Todd, our main boss, is on a live chat 24/7. So you can hop on there and ask him all the questions you want. He's going to probably thank me for that in just a minute here. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.